So welcome to everybody who is just joining us. It's really great to have you here for today's In Conversation With, and really looking forward to hearing this session actually, and to hearing from Richard and Beth, who I'll get to introduce themselves in just a moment's time. So for those of you who are new to BrainFood, I know there's people on our call today who are new to BrainFood, so welcome. BrainFood is a community that we created back last year when we were still allowed to see one another. And it was designed as a place where L&D professionals can come together to engage, to form a community, to inspire one another, and to get curious about learning. So a real safe place for learning specialists to come together was what we really wanted BrainFood to be about. So it's really great that you're on this call today, and we've got a great guest in Beth to share her experiences. So really looking forward to what she's going to share with us today. If you are new to BrainFood, then I would encourage you to go onto our LinkedIn profile and just connect with us on there, because we share quite a lot of content and information through LinkedIn. We've also got a YouTube channel, so we've done numerous of these In Conversations With, and they're all on our YouTube channel, so you're more than welcome to go and have a look at all of those different interviews that we've done with various different people over the months. And as soon as we're able to, we will be getting back to doing our BrainFood live events. So that will be face-to-face, typically done in central London, for those of you who are London-based, where we actually get a chance to kind of press the flesh and meet in person, which is obviously much nicer than this virtual. Virtual is great, but it's obviously much nicer for us to connect in person. So we'll look forward to that opportunity coming back in the next few months, hopefully. So what I would encourage you to do, you are all mute. As we go through today's session, we really want you to engage and to interact with Richard, Beth, and myself. So we'd really love you to use the chat function to share a little bit of your questions, ask anything that you want. So as you're going through the conversation, Richard's going to be our host for the conversation, but at relevant times, we will be stopping and seeing what questions have come in from the group that you'd like to ask Beth about her experiences that she can share her views on. So please feel free, use the chat function. We'll be monitoring it throughout, and we'll give a great opportunity for us to share our questions. I forgot to introduce myself. So my name's Hayden. For those who don't know me, I know a few on the line, but for those who don't know me, so my name's Hayden Bratt, one of the founders of BrainFood, with a few of the other founders on here. So Richard, I can see Julia on here, and there's a few others who helped us form this wonderful community. So that's enough from me. Encourage you to ask your questions, contribute as much as you can in the session, and that will be great. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Richard, who's going to take us through our session. I'll ask Richard to introduce himself, and then he in turn will ask Beth to introduce herself, and we can make a start. So have a wonderful conversation. I am really excited about today. It's going to be a great discussion. I just know it's going to be lots of little nuggets for us to learn. So have a great session, guys.
Great, thank you very much, Hayden, and thanks for that introduction. Well, hello, and great to see you all, everybody. My name's Richard, and it's my great pleasure to be leading this In Conversation session with Beth Ahrens. I'm one of the BrainFood founders, and I've been in learning and development for approximately the last 15 years. So really passionate about learning and development, but also very, very passionate about hospitality, in particular luxury hospitality, the guest experience, and also the employee experience. So we're really going to be delving into that over the next 60 minutes with my fantastic guest, who I'd like to introduce now, Beth Ahrens.
Thank you very much, Richard, and so lovely to have been invited. Thank you very much for including me, and great to see some familiar names as well. So some people I know that I've worked with in the past, and indeed even in the present. So that's great. So firstly, let me start by introducing myself. My name's Beth Ahrens, and I'm the Global Director for Dorchester Collection Academy. I'll explain a little bit more about the Academy shortly, but I'll start by giving you a bit of background about me. So I have been in human resources and learning and development now for probably some 25 plus years, which is a little bit more than I care to mention, though sadly during lockdown the grey hair is starting to really show through, so I know that is true. And I started my career predominantly in hospitality, and indeed the majority of my career has been in the luxury hospitality environment, and that includes hotels, but also private members clubs, health clubs and spas, in both the UK and in Europe. Most recently, then, I have been with Dorchester Collection. So I started with them as the area director of HR, and I was looking after our 3 UK hotels. So that's Coworth Park, which is our hotel in the countryside, the Dorchester, and I'm sure everyone knows the Dorchester on 45 on Park Lane, and then 45 Park Lane, which is just across the road, and that's its little baby sister, with 46 rooms. In total, that equates to around 1,200 employees across those 3 properties, and a small regional team based next door. So in my capacity as the area director, I had a small team of 10 people, and 3 of those people specifically looking after the L&D for those properties. And I think what was particularly interesting during the time when I was in that role is that we received a number of inquiries from our guests. And our guests are from all different walks of life and backgrounds, and many of them business owners themselves. And they would often ask us if we could train their own employees. And we would agree to do so because we're very generous of spirit, and we would spend time either giving presentations or doing show rounds, explaining some of the magic of the hotels and how we bring it to life. And it wasn't me, but it was my manager, Eugenio Piri, who is our Chief People and Culture Officer, who said, you know what, maybe this could actually be a commercial enterprise. And he asked me if I would then establish Dorchester Collection Academy when we had permission to do so. And I was given the great honour of heading up the academy, and we opened our doors only in February of 2018. So we've not been around for long at all. And contrary to what many people believe we do, which is to provide training for our own employees, our focus is training other luxury and aspirational brands. And we really do that across 2 dimensions. So it's how to create the ultimate customer service experience in your own environment, whatever that happens to be. And it is how to do that through inspirational leadership. So we really focus our time on those 2 areas. And most recently, and perhaps more recently, we have been asked by some of our clients to now start to provide consultancy services as well, to really help them elevate themselves in all sorts of different ways. And that obviously stems from a transformation process, a program that they may be going through. And often we are engaged and retained by the CEO or the managing director of that business. To date, we're working probably with about 32 different businesses across 8 different business sectors. So there clearly was a requirement for it, which is fantastic. And I'm pleased to say that even in this environment, we have continued to get inquiries, and we're continuing to prepare proposals and discuss opportunities with prospective business for the future. So that, by way of a summary, is a little bit about me and the Academy.
Great. Thank you very much, Beth. And it's great to hear that just in 2 years, the fact that you're working with 32 different businesses across 8 sectors is great, and testament to the hard work that you do over at the Dorchester Academy and the fantastic brand that you have behind you.
Absolutely. And I have just a brilliant team. They really are outstanding, incredibly creative, really diligent, and just in a league of their own. They really are. So I'm hugely proud to be part of that with them. And, you know, we work very much hand in glove.
Well, tell me, let's move on. I mean, we're both passionate about hospitality, and I've worked in hospitality, as you know, for many, many years in the service sector. And hospitality is really one of those industries that has taken the brunt at this time. I mean, there's probably no other industry that has been so severely affected. So tell me, you know, in terms of the academy, what have been your key challenges since the pandemic, and you know, what have you been doing?
Sure. So it's really interesting because we are a global business. So we started to feel the impact as far back as December, January. We had a piece of business that was actually due to start with us in February. And that was actually from China. And very regrettably, we were unable to fulfill that because, of course, we all know what was happening over there. So we already started to hear about it quite early on. We were attuned to it, and indeed, we had started to talk about it. Particularly my head of business development, Corinne, she was quite alert to it because we could see what was going on in the areas within which we are already working and potentially what that impact was going to be. So I think quite early on, we started to give reassurances to those clients that we would be here for them, that we would continue to engage, that, you know, from our perspective, it was all about the relationship with them. And that was something that we hold as in far more esteem than almost anything else. And really then when fast forward into March and what was happening in the UK in particular, we had already implemented enhanced regimes in terms of our own teams, in terms of our customers coming in. We had already started to say to our customers, our guests coming through into the academy, that we'll refrain from handshaking, and instead we were finding other ways to show our warm welcome, and lots of smiles, of course, and really making sure that people felt very safe when they came in. And then when we did have to sadly close our doors, we've continued to keep in touch with all of our clients. So whilst we have closed the door of the academy itself in its essence is still functioning. So people are still very engaged. We're still keeping in touch as a team. In fact, just prior to this, we had our weekly team catch up with everyone, which was fantastic to see and hear what everyone's been up to over the course of the last week. And we are continuing to do a lot of development work. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. But I think our main focus when we knew that this was going to be happening was to really engage and keep engaged with our clients.
Yeah.
And to really show them that we're still here for them and we're still keeping in touch.
That's great. I think that's so important, isn't it? I think clients really want that level of reassurance. And I know that we are going to come to, in a moment, the new normal in the future and the sorts of things that you're looking at. But before we do that, I just want to circle back to, you know, what life is like, you know, a sort of day in the life or in the day, in the week, if you like, of being in the academy, because I guess you're not doing any face-to-face training at the moment. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, did you suddenly have to cancel courses? And I know that a lot of the luxury hospitality training that you do is done face-to-face.
Absolutely. So we had always made a decision very early on that everything that we did was about a personalized service. And we feel that engaging with people face-to-face is perhaps one of the most important things that we can do, because then you really get a sense of who people are. And we therefore had very little that we did online and remotely. Most of, if we were to do anything, it would be coaching sessions, and the rest of it in terms of actual delivery was all face-to-face. And when we did shift into the environment that we're in at the moment, where we all were in lockdown, I had to, together with the team, rapidly rethink, are we still doing the right thing? Do we want to change what we're doing and really follow what many other businesses have chosen to do? We chose to stay true to our brand, and this is therefore not been the time to move everything online. And we continue to really focus on what we believe is what we add in terms of real value, which is classroom-based training, for want of a better phrase, face-to-face. We have, however, looked at, is there room for remote learning for us? What does that online learning platform look like? So we spent a lot of time looking at all of the different mediums that there are and how we could create a luxury learning environment online, and to still stay true to what our brand stands for, because part of the reason that people come to Dorchester Collection Academy, knowing that there are lots of other training consultancies out there and other businesses that specialize in luxury, why would they come to us? Well, the reason they come to us is because they want a taste of what it is to be part of Dorchester Collection and our fabulous hotels. So if we were to then modify our rationale to be something that was not true to our hotels, then that would mean that people were not necessarily getting the same value that they had been before. And we did not want to distill or lose the value of the reasons why people come to Dorchester Collection Academy. So we very carefully looked at what content could be done online, how could that be done online, and how can we still retain that luxury feel. And I've worked very closely with my head of programs, Jolt Boros, and I've also had input from our L&D team. So Paula McMinn's been quite involved in that, as indeed has Kate Entwistle. And they have all contributed to what works and what doesn't work, and how can we do this and do it really, really well. Because for us, it's got to be about doing it brilliantly, because people are paying a premium when they come to us. So we have to make sure that we absolutely blow them away. And there's only certain things that we feel we can do well online and really blow them away online. So therefore, we've stuck to the principles of how we're going to really make sure that when we do get back into the classroom, we're absolutely going to just, wow them to the nth degree. And that's really what we're all about. So it's now about how we're looking at the programs that we do have to elevate them to an even higher level, making sure that they are sharp, they're crisp, and that they're super current. And we've always taken the principle and the approach that our content has to be relevant and up to date. And we go back and we review our content at least every 6 months to make sure that it's really hitting the nail on the head for the people who are delegates and on the receiving end. And this has been a prime opportunity to be able to go back and review and make sure that our content really resonates with what will be the way things are going forward. And so we're very much looking at the future and how we can ensure that people get an absolutely first-class experience when they come into the academy versus doing it online.
Mm. And I think for many businesses, they're using this time as an opportunity to perhaps relook at what they're doing and take this opportunity to reposition some of the training content that they've got. We'll talk in a little bit about the blend between virtual and face-to-face training, and what the new normal perhaps looks like across the different products that you at the Dorchester Academy offer. But that must have been a huge upheaval for you and your team to suddenly have to swing the pendulum more towards, okay, the virtual space, considering that luxury hospitality is all around seeing the whites of their eyes in the classroom, and it's all the smallest nuances are so important in that environment. So tell me, how did you motivate firstly yourself and your team during all of this upheaval, and then set a course in a new direction?
So it's interesting because I think, this is the time for leaders to really show their mettle and to really step up to the plate. And I'd like to think that, on the basis that we run inspirational leadership courses, that part of what I need to do is be an inspirational leader to my team. So I've spent time making sure that they're settled, that they're happy, that they're comfortable, that they have got the right working environment. And that was very much in the initial instances, and really making sure that, even finding a time that we could all speak, knowing that they may be in a household with young children or partners who were also working as well from home, and how those people might be feeling, and checking in with them to make sure that they were okay. My fabulous PA Babita was in the process of moving house, and so that in itself produced a real challenge for her. So just being there for people and really showing that we genuinely care. It's about them as people. It's not about productivity. It's not about, churning the work out. It's making sure that each individual is being cared for and looked after, and that we're sensitive to how everyone's feeling, because everyone feels differently in this environment. Some people settle into remote working fairly quickly, and other people less so. For some of the team, they absolutely, relished it, and it was great space. For others of them, they found it really, slightly more challenging. So it was that continuous dialogue, and it was also about creating a routine for people really early on. So that was one of the guiding lights. I said, let's get a routine. Let's agree what that routine's going to look like. Let's try and make that work for all of us. So we agreed initially that every morning, just as we do in the academy, we would have a 9 o'clock team huddle and get together and talk about what we were all doing each day. And that was 15-20 minutes, but it was a great opportunity just to connect. And then all the other meetings that we would normally have had happen throughout the course of the week in the academy between each other, we carried on. Now, those have obviously been modified over time now. But I was also really transparent with the team. And I said, I'm under no illusion that the work will dwindle over a period of time. And whilst we have got lots to keep us occupied initially, that might change. And I don't want you to worry about that. This is a great opportunity to not just look at the work we're working on, but also it's an opportunity to really concentrate on developing ourselves. So there's been lots of those messages, which hopefully, and in fact, I know from the various conversations I've had with people, they've really taken that on board, and there's some really interesting things that people are working on to develop themselves as much as anything, as well as some really interesting content that we're working on for the academy. But we really haven't deviated from our core approach. So whilst we're looking at small things that we may put and do through online learning, we're not planning on changing our prime focus, which is the classroom-based approach that we still have. We envisage that classroom-based approach and the classroom itself may not start up fully, particularly quickly, but we think 3 to 6 months, people will start to get back into the classroom. And certainly already we do have a small piece of business in the classroom for beginning of July.
Right.
So some early green shoots there, which is really positive to see. And that was a piece of business that was rescheduled from March So we've been keeping in touch with that particular client, and they've said, no, we rescheduled it for June, and then we rescheduled it recently for early July. But we're trying to be really flexible with everybody, and we want to make sure that they're feeling super comfortable before they come in. So we've got lots of plans in place about how we're going to do that, and do that really wonderfully well.
Great. Well, I know that a lot of our Brain Food listeners will really be keen to hear about those green shoots and the future, and they're itching to go on to that. I know I can sense it just from the chat box. So talking of the chat box, I'm just going to quickly hand back to Hayden now to share with us what's going on in the chat box. So Hayden, what are you seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So great conversation so far. Some really good insights for us. So there's a couple of questions come through. So Jason's asked, and I think you just kind of referenced this a little bit, but in the mid-future, he's asked, will the mid-future be online, and when do you see the classroom coming back, or even if? So it's clear it is coming back, but I guess July is a good start point. Where do you see maybe that you'll get back into filling your classrooms full of learners again, the way that you were?
Sure. So I suppose, to go to the first part of that question, is there space for online as well as, the classroom? Our view is the classroom is not dead. We know from a lot of the research that we've done and the conversations that we're having internally as a team, that everyone, whilst they have enjoyed engaging with the webinars, they've enjoyed the self-learning, they have absolutely and categorically missed social interaction that you only get when you're together with people. Let's face it, it's big news at the moment that we can now all meet in groups of 6. And, so that's exciting. And if it could be that we only ever wanted to connect with our families and friends on Zoom, the fact that everybody is wanting to get together in parks, even if they are 2 meters apart, tells you that people want to connect, want to be back together. How we do that is going to be really important, because we want people to feel really safe. We want people to feel that their personal needs are being well considered and well thought through, and indeed that we've done all the thinking for them, because they should come just to enjoy the learning experience rather than worrying about all the incidentals going on around them, and we will provide those reassurances to people. We do think that the classroom environment will start to pick up probably around September time, whether that's within the academy or whether that's in people's own environments. We'll be flexible to that, and we'll look to see how we do that and do that well. We will help support a client if they wish us to do it on their premises, to make sure that they've got all of the right measures in place to protect not only the facilitation team going in, but also their own colleagues, because you don't want to take away from the learning experience. When people are worried about something, they're not going to be in their best headspace for learning. And we think that that's particularly important at the moment, to make sure that they can see and they can feel safe in the environment that they're in, and then they can concentrate on the things that are going to be really important for the future.
Yeah, great. Really good. There's a question from Julie, which I think is going to segue into where we're going. But just before we get to that one of the questions I had was, I'm just really keen to hear what feedback you've had from clients. So obviously, I'm sure people have been asking you about this move to online and shifting, and I think it's wonderful that you said you wanted to stick to what you do brilliantly and continue to do it brilliantly well. So I'm just kind of intrigued as to what kind of feedback you've had from the clients you've been engaging with around that, your response to wanting to get back in the classroom rather than shifting to a more virtual environment.
That's a really good question. We had a number of inquiries from prospect clients, so clients who really weren't already working with us, asking whether or not we would be moving to an online platform, or indeed if we had content that we could share online. And again, we felt that wasn't akin to a luxury experience. That wasn't personalized. And we explained how we do things best and where we believe we can add value for them. And therefore, we really encourage people to wait. And if they are particularly interested in a topic, we know that there are lots of other great things out there, and there's a lot of free webinars and so forth out there at the moment, and there are lots of people who are already in that space and do it incredibly well. So we have guided people in that direction. Interestingly enough, our own clients who know us and work with us already have not really asked us about that. They've asked us more about when can we restart. And, and we've been working with each client individually about when we can restart, because everyone feels a slightly different way. They have different concerns, different questions. And so long as we're in a position where we're able to address and reassure, then we're really excited about starting and re-engaging with them face-to-face again, and planning how we do that really well for them.
Brilliant.
And great questions, guys. Thanks very much. And do keep the questions coming. Hayden, did you have anything more from your side?
There's a question from Julie, which kind of is on the back of something that Beth's already shared with us around kind of making sure the environment is safe for people to come back in. And I guess Julie's question kind of builds on that a little bit, which is, how are you going to cover some people might be really anxious about getting back into a classroom environment, and despite all of the measures that you might take, you might still have some resistance. So I guess just as you kind of, I know the conversation is going to move to the new normal, so you want to pick it up as part of that, but just
sure,
people that challenge, I guess.
It's a really difficult one, because I guess all the way through this situation, and I'll call it that for want of a better phrase at the moment, everyone has reacted so differently, and luxury is all about being empathetic and kind and supportive and generous of spirit as well. So if somebody really was struggling with the idea of coming back into a classroom, and it may not even be the classroom, it may be the journey to the classroom that they're really concerned about, then we need to talk them through that, and we need to provide the reassurances that we can provide. But at the end of the day, it's got to be up to them, and we're not going to push people to do something that they don't feel comfortable with, because they're just not going to be in the right frame of mind when they then get into the working, into the classroom environment. So what we can do, and we've already prepared, is as part of our joining instruction and directions, we've got a separate document that we've already prepared, which would go out to people to reassure them about all of the measures that we have in place, so that they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. And we feel that that will go quite some ways forward to helping people. But ultimately, we'll have one-to-one conversations with anybody who needs additional reassurances, and then it's got to be their decision. And hopefully we will have provided all the reassurances for them to want to be there. But at the end of the day, it's got to be up to them.
And I think that reassurance piece is so important, isn't it? And I suppose it's the same for the guest experience in your hotels. And I imagine that there's a lot of work going on at the moment around what that guest experience looks like. And so tell me, how does that drive what's going on in the Learning Academy? What changes to the guest experience, short-term and long-term, will guide and shape what the future of your learning content looks like?
So for us, and as I mentioned really early on, we were born out of the fact that people wanted to understand how they could apply the principles that we use within our hotels, within the Dorchester Collection hotels, and utilize that within their own businesses. And our real strong point within all of our properties is our people, and it's the service that those amazing teams provide. And therefore we mustn't lose sight of it's about the people, it's about how those people engage, and it's about how we provide great service. So whilst there are all sorts of additional health and safety measures that need to be put in place, the warmth, the care, the personality, the engagement of the people is at the centre of everything that we do, because our customer is at the heart of everything that we do, whether they're a guest in the hotel or whether they're a guest with us in the academy. And therefore, it's about how we really elevate to an even higher level the service experience, so that people feel that they are having that luxury experience. We don't want it to be all perspex and plastic, because that's not a luxury experience. And whilst some of those measures within a country might be being defined in terms of PPE and social distancing, then we still have to remember the reason people are coming to a luxury hotel environment, or indeed coming to the academy, is because they want a luxury experience. And if then they can't engage with the people that they've got to know, that they have a relationship with, that they've got to know our hotels from afar, or indeed they've been with us before, and they can't have that same connection, then they'll feel that they're missing out. So our job is to make sure that all of those transactional things, whilst they're there, they should be muted, and we need to really focus on a great service experience and that real engagement. I know that if we look at what's happening in hospitality at the moment, some of the coffee shops are starting to open. Some of the cafes and so forth are starting to open. This is the time to really show people that they provide great hospitality. It's not just about standing 2 meters away. It's about welcoming people. It's about saying, how are you? It's about saying, so lovely to have you back with us. We're delighted you've come through our doors. We want to make a really amazing coffee for you. We want to really make your day, because it's probably been your first coffee shop coffee for, probably 11, 12 weeks now. And that's where those businesses can really raise their game, and that's what we believe our hotels do so brilliantly well, and one of the reasons why people choose to come back to our hotels time and time again and stay connected with us throughout all of this.
Yeah, I could not agree more, Beth. I think that when the guest and the consumer starts to come back, and they will, there's going to be such a higher level of expectation than we've never seen before. And just, within the last week, I went to a coffee shop in Soho in central London, and my expectation was up here, but I was quite disappointed, if I'm honest with you. It was a very substandard transactional level of service, and in my mind I was waiting for that welcome back, and it's so great to see you. Conversely, when I go to Waitrose, for instance, the service is absolutely phenomenal. Great retail experience there, and I was looking for a cocktail shaker to have some cocktails out on the balcony the other day, and this great a sales assistant said, I said, where are they? I can't find them anywhere in the store. And she said, I think there's one left, but I'm not sure where it is. Hang on, I'll go and find it. And she came back literally a few moments later with a big smile on her face and went, I found you one, but it's bright rainbow colour. Is that okay for you? And I said, yes, it's perfect. And I went away smiling. The sales assistant went away smiling. And that, I think, is what the consumer is really looking for now. And that is also going to drive some confidence in
absolutely. And that's where you've really got that emotional connection. And I think within the L&D world, we're potentially at risk of moving too heavily towards compliance, and not thinking about the customer engagement, and not thinking about the emotional connections that need to happen throughout all of that cycle, if you will, that customer journey. So it is so important that we don't lose sight of that, and that we build that into anything that will be happening, and that has to be our key focus, because it's relationships that have kept us connected up until now, and those relationships, I believe, will hold really fast into the future if we really make sure that we show people that we care, that we have a meaningful relationship with them, that we're concerned about them as as people, and you know, that we show that we want to make their day. We want to give them a great experience, even if it's something as simple as finding a cocktail shaker that really meets your requirements. You know, and I just think those little touches, that's what makes the difference at the moment.
It certainly does, even if it's a rainbow cocktail shaker. I mean, I think, you know, there's never been a time where we're actually starting to examine both team members, leaders, consumers, everybody. We're starting to examine what's really important to us in life. And, you know, great question from Hayden here in the chat box, who's interested to hear what is the learning ethos that sits behind achieving behavioural change in such a high expectation environment without giving the crown jewels away. Are there any tips from your experience of making learning stick? Which moves us nicely to the future of learning. And I mean, you know, we've gone through so much change in such a short space of time. You know, how are we going to, you know, look at those behavioural changes and really start to understand how to make learning stick both in a virtual and face-to-face environment?
So I think there's a couple of points that I would just I'd pick up on there. One is preparing the learner to learn, and I think, you know, that's a bit of an old adage, but even more so now. I think the second thing is that removing the reliance on PowerPoint. We have gone dramatically away from PowerPoint, so much so that we've even gone dramatically away from such things as handouts. And we rarely have a handout that we will give to people to take away. For us, it's about actually the experience. It's the experience, it's the discussion, it's the activities, it's the immersive element that is so important. And when you're immersing people in it and they're really experiencing it, then that's where you get those aha moments. That's where you get that deep level of behavioral change, and that's where it sticks. Because if they have those aha moments, so it's not talk and chalk, it's a true experience, then that's the lasting impression. And, you know, my L&D team within the academy have just got fabulous techniques that they use throughout to make sure that they create those aha moments along the way. We also believe in making sure that people go away with a handful of key messages. So it's not about bombarding people with a ton of information. And I think probably over the last 10, 11 weeks or so, we've probably all filled our brains with a ton of information. But actually, how are we practically applying that information? So it's keep it really simple. Understand what those core messages are that you want to really ensure are embedded, and then look at how you can practically apply those in as near a workplace as you can practically get to. And that's, I think, where you get the behavioral change. And we know from some of the clients that we've worked with that they've had behavioral changes, not only amongst the team in the environment and then back into work, but that has transitioned through into a number of other ways in which they now work and behave and do things differently, so that they're much more open, they're much more open to change, they're much more engaged generally, they're less judgmental, and when a suggestion or idea comes forward, they're more willing to say, yeah, let's give it a go. And I think that shows how the behavioral changes can happen, but let's not throw absolutely everything at everyone in one session and assume that it's all going to take shape, because some people take longer for it to embed and develop than others. And it's, again, being sensitive to that.
And I think, you hit the nail on the head there. And Beth, it's music to my ears when I start to hear things like, we're moving away from PowerPoints, we're moving away from the traditional handouts. And do you think finally the lasting legacy of something, as dramatic as, this pandemic and lockdown on the L&D industry for learning leaders and for learners themselves is that things are going to change. So it is going to be more experiential learning, that we are finally going to move to a more blended environment rather than the traditional approach. And I know that when I was a learning leader, I would say a large proportion of my time was educating leaders across the business as to what learning could and should look like, as opposed to the traditional models, which, you mentioned PowerPoints and handouts. There's a whole variety of things that just stayed the same for such a long period of time.
I think this is an ideal opportunity for L&D professionals to really have their own seat at the table. So much of what this group of people, I'm sure, know is how important it is to engage the teams. And if anyone can win them over, the L&D teams can, and how they will transition to the new type of service and the new approach. With all the wonderful techniques and opportunities that I'm sure that your BrainFood community, L&D professionals have at their fingertips, this is the time to really show what you can, and probably what you've done every day, but what you can and do so well. And to really stick to your guns, I suppose, and not be sidelined, and not assume that you're not going to have the opportunity to still do really amazing things. So yes, the compliance piece is important, and we understand that, but actually, what else is important? What is really important for the customer? What's really important for our people? And let's not lose sight of that, and let's make sure that we build that into whatever the learning programs are that we're creating at the moment. What are going to be the key skills that our teams are going to need now in our environment? Let's look at those. Let's understand what that means for us, and let's research them, and let's make sure that we're including that in whatever the narrative is that we're going to be delivering in our environment, and get as close to your brand and your objectives as you possibly can, because that's where I think L&D really makes a difference.
Well, we, some great points there, Beth, and we have 10 minutes left, so I just want to encourage any more questions in the chat box. But as you say, you make a great point, and in the new normal, technology is going to be such a key part of that. I mean, who'd have thought that we're all now proficient in Zoom? It's a Zoom phenomenon. But earlier on, you talked about learning platforms. And there's such an array of different learning platforms and technology out there. So what are the trends? What are you seeing? I know that you and I were on a session together recently that was hosted by LinkedIn Learning, and it's staggering the amount of individuals that are engaging in LinkedIn Learning, and also the amount of C-suite leaders that are participating in the LinkedIn Learning portfolios. So, what are you seeing? Let's talk about, luxury hospitality, but wider afield. I know that you work with me. So, what are you seeing out there?
So I think people still understand what luxury is. People still want that personalized service. If we focus specifically on remote or virtual learning, based on the research that we did within our team, we probably looked at something in the region of 30 different learning platforms. And some of them have got, great plus points, others of them, other great plus points. But what we haven't seen is one platform that does everything. So I think from an L&D perspective, when it comes to providing a luxury learning experience, unless there happens to be 2 or 3 of you, involved in the learning experience, it's really difficult to juggle all of that and look at your delegates and make sure you're being responsive to them, as well as all the technology. So where I think, and I'd love it if it would happen, would be if some of these independent platforms amalgamated together and they started to work in partnership. It would help us as individuals who have to use these pieces of technology, these tools, so that we don't need 10 of us to be able to operate all of the elements that are required to make a great experience. Otherwise, I think then that whilst this may appear to be a less expensive way of doing delivery, because you need a few of you to be able to do it well, you've still got the human cost. And certainly we found that a group of any more than 9 people in a remote learning environment requires 2 of you. And so therefore this is not necessarily cost effective when it comes to the number of L&D people who are actually doing delivery. So it's probably smaller groups of people is definitely going to be the way forward, particularly if you want to do, create a really impactful learning experience and you're doing it remotely. I think also the amount of learning that happens in any segment needs to be really distilled down. And I'm sure that many people have already found that, maximum 45 minutes typically doing any form of remote learning. And if you're not engaged continuously throughout that, your brain drifts off, you start answering your emails, you go for a wander, you do a bit of ironing, and then you get back and somebody's still talking at you. That's not what you want. So I think making sure that those elements are really thoughtfully considered as part of the learning. If you're going to do it remotely, that has to be a part of it. I think personalization is also critical, whether you're doing it remotely or you're doing it in classroom, because again, that's going to really make the learning resonate for the individual.
Yeah, and I know that having done both face-to-face and virtual facilitation, they're both a very different skill set. There are some similarities, but facilitating a course virtually does require a different skill set and practice to make it fully engaging and worthwhile. And so let's think about the user experience. And Jason, who's in cabin crew training, great to see you on here, buddy, has mentioned around devices. And do you think a device that individuals will use will make a difference? So having access to guides or apps, and where can the luxury be brought into that?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I'm expert enough to be able to give that answer. What I would say is that there is some really great content out there, whether that's through an app, whether that's through a webinar, whether that's through an online portal. There is some great content out there. Ultimately, it's got to be down to the learner to use that to pick out the salient points. And I guess where that element is missing, the facilitator, is how do you practically apply that now? So it's a little bit, I'll use the analogy of learning to drive a car. For those of us that do drive, you can read a book on learning to drive a car. There is the highway code, which tells you about all the rules and regulations. And you can complete some, as people have to now, part of your test online. And that gives you some of the basic highway code principles. But reading a book, getting into a car and actually starting the engine, understanding the biting point, understanding how to change gear, applying all of those things takes, as we know, a lot of time. On average, most people have between 20 and 40 lessons, I believe it is, to pass their driving test. And as we all know, that does not make you a competent driver afterwards. So this is the practical application. It then takes years to become, an advanced driver and a really competent one. And indeed, you can drive for years and still do it really badly. So if you apply the same principles to any other learning environment, then I think you've probably got your answer. There's only so much you can gain without practically applying it. And it's being given the right support to apply it in your workplace that really makes the difference.
Well, you're talking to someone that passed on their second time. So I hear you, Beth. I hear you. Right. So Hayden, we've got, a couple of minutes left. Just swing back to you for any final thoughts in the chat box from yourself.
First of all, great. It's been a really good discussion, some really good insights, and some great kind of thoughts coming over there. So Jason raised a point earlier around kind of talking about cabin crew, about customers be looking for reassurance versus many feeling quite volatile, and it's this ability to be delighted along with reassurance. I think is a really valid point. I had an experience last week where I went to an optician and was allowed to go in, but the experience itself was horrendous because they were so worried about the safety side that they completely forgot about the humanity side. And it was, they were doing their best, but it was an awful experience from a customer's perspective. So I think that's part of the challenge as we go forward with this, is how do we balance out the need for protecting people with serving people. So yeah.
And we've talked endlessly, Hayden, about all the different customer experiences out there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So last thing from me, Beth, and Jason's just put Barnard Castle, yes. Moving forward, what would be your top tips to the L&D community? I mean, do we all give it away for free at the moment? If we're trying to business develop, bring in new customers, either in a business to business or business to customer setting, do we have to just, give it all for free, or what's your strategy?
So I guess it comes down to relationships, and an analogy that we used very early on when we opened the academy was, if we were a bakery, would you feel that you would allow a customer to walk into the shop and just walk out with the bread and just take a baguette off the shelf and walk out the door? A baguette, £1, €1 maybe, not a huge sum of money, but you would stop that person. So why do we in the L&D world feel that we need to give it away for free? What you have got is so valuable. You've got knowledge, you've got experience, you've got business acumen, you've got a real genuine understanding of the world within which you operate. Why should it be free? And what you have to do is look at, how do we add value to this proposition? Yes, I might allow people to try things. I might give people a little taster of something. But it's about creating that connection that then ensures that those people want more. You want to leave them hungry for more. You want them to buy the baguette. You don't want them to walk out the door with it. And it's the same. You wouldn't do that in a shop. Why should you do that with something that's far more valuable? And I really do feel that this is where we have to hold fast and stay quite firm as L&D people, and be commercial. Not feel that we have our arm twisted, but instead add value, make a difference, show the impact of what you have done before, show be transparent with your KPIs, be transparent about your ROI, and make sure that people can see these are the deliverables. This is what people are going to come out with afterwards, and that should be worth. And when you want to down to a price per person, it actually is incredibly inexpensive for what a huge number of professionals do so well. You wouldn't expect to be able to go to a consultant surgeon through private healthcare for free. You would have to pay that in some way. You're paying for all their years of knowledge. Why should we be any different? And I think what's so incredible about this world, our world that we operate in, is that we are continuously reviewing and looking at the landscape and looking at how we can make that and improve our own knowledge so that we can share those nuggets with other people and make a difference with other people. So I would say don't devalue yourself. Really stick to your guns on it, and really, take your seat at the table and show what you're made of, because there's some really, really brilliant people out there.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I love that. Help businesses help them to sell the baguette, and by doing so, they can afford to do some great things with learning and development. So we want businesses to afford to, sell the baguettes to their individuals and bid for individuals to buy those baguettes. Good. Well, thanks so much. I can't thank you enough, Beth, for joining us today. It has been absolutely terrific. I wish you and the Dorchester Collection Academy all the success for the future. Keep doing great things, keep inspiring everyone that you're inspiring, and hopefully we'll return to some level of normality very soon. I'd just like to now hand back over to Hayden to wrap up this session and talk about some other brain food events. But once again, thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Hayden.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Beth. Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation and a great way to end it. Actually, I loved your thoughts on that last question, which were fantastic. And thank you, Richard, for being a wonderful host, asking some great questions and managing the conversation really well, as always. Such an expert in this area, so thank you for that. So I just really want to take a couple of minutes, not even that, just a few seconds, just to share a couple of events that are coming up. We could love you to come and join us on. We're actually going to be doing a special brain food event with Richard. Actually, he's going to be our host again for this session, which will be a little bit different. We're going to actually do a free session for people in this community to learn a little bit more about online facilitation, because it's obviously becoming a big part of what we're going to be doing. So Richard has done lots of learning this, and because of the brain food community, wants to share some of his insights. So we're going to be doing a session. Remind me of the date, Richard. Have you got the date there?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now.
No, sorry. I think it's a week on Friday, I think, but it'll be on LinkedIn and we'll promote it out. So that's the first event we'll be doing, which will be a guide to facilitating online. And then the second one we got coming up is on the 22nd of June, which is with Emily, who is the occupational psychologist with the Matthew Syed's organization. And she's going to be sharing the story of how they've taken growth mindset and turned it into a psychometric tool that can actually reliably measure people's fixed or growth mindsets, and sharing that story. So that'll be on the 22nd of June. So we'd love to have you back on future events. Do keep your
12th
eyes.
of June, Hayden, for the virtual session. Yeah, 12th of June.
Yeah. So 12th of June for the virtual session, 22nd of June for the one with another In Conversation with Emily, and keep an eye on LinkedIn, and we will be looking forward to sharing more content with you there. So thanks everybody for being part of today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Beth added so much value to us all today. So again, heartfelt thanks to Beth for her sharing today. And we look forward to seeing you all on our future sessions. So have a wonderful rest of the day. The weather's going to be beautiful at the weekend, so enjoy it from a safe distance from everybody, of course. But have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.